if you Google the word retirement, if you look at what pops up, it'll circle around money, leisure, travel, and rest. I mean, really, that's it. I mean, and there isn't a lot else. I mean, if you look at what retirement is,
that's about
that
it.
is what you see is those four major things, and that is, and for most people, is a great part of their retirement, but that can't be the goal.
Well, that was Ben Taatjes talking about what society deems the most important parts of your retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here on behalf of Ben Taatjes and myself. Thank you so much for joining us here today. What defines a fulfilling retirement? Is it travel, financial stability, or leisure activities? While each of these elements has its place, retirees who focus solely on these facets often find themselves unfulfilled. In this podcast, Ben Taatjes uncovers the deeper, often overlooked aspects that truly contribute to a meaningful retirement. Enjoy this episode. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show. Jared Sebesta here joining you. So glad that you're joining us here on the podcast. We're going to talk more about what is really important in retirement. And I got to tell you, this is yet another show where we are kind of debunking myths here on the show, unlearning what retirement's all about. Because whether you believe it or not, society has given you kind of a story, a template, so to speak, on how you should live out and view your retirement. So we spend a lot of time on this show unlearning kind of what society has morphed into over the last 50 to 100 years. So if you are new to our show, thanks for joining us, but get ready to hear maybe a little different narrative on retirement. We're not going to talk about money today. In fact, we rarely talk about money on this show. This is not about investment strategies or anything like that. We're not going to touch that, especially on today's podcast. We're going to talk about your life, your retirement, and how you can really walk into the most impactful season of a person's life. Again, if you want to go back and listen to our shows, we're on all the major platforms. Find us, subscribe while you are there, and share this content. If you have somebody in your life, maybe a friend or a family member that could utilize this content, we always encourage you to share and like our content online. We have talked about resetting your paradigm in many ways over the last several shows. We talked about resetting your table, figuratively and literally. We talked about resetting your expectations in retirement. We talked about resetting your routine, what you do with your time in retirement. We talked about resetting the way you think. And last week, we talked about resetting your view of success. And on today's show, we're going to talk more about that, really getting down to the crux of what is really important in retirement. Ben Taatjes joins me on the show now. And Ben, you've been doing this for 20 years. You've met with literally thousands of people, helping them make this transition. And that's really been the reason why we even started this mini-series. Was this is a major life transition, and as with many things, when you transition from one season to another, we have to kind of reset how we look at life in many ways, and that's how we got to this point.
Yeah, I think it just was on my heart that people don't give it enough credit, right? We don't give it the time to plan the non-financial side of retirement, Jared. We moved right into this. I can't wait to retire because I've got this huge list of things that I want to get accomplished. Right? We've got this all the things that should fill our time. And when you're super busy and you're unwinding, or you're getting close into your career, you don't have a lot of time. So it looks really, really good, and it can be. Yep. It can be a great time of life. However, if done wrong, and if we're focusing on the wrong things, it does let people down. And that's something I've seen over my 20-year career, time and time again, is this unmet expectation of what retirement really is.
You've seen people say, or heard people say, that they have spent more time planning for a vacation than actual retirement. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, they've spent, sometimes months, right, planning a big vacation. My family and I just took a trip out to Italy and the Amalfi Coast and Sorrento, and it was amazing. And we spent months planning for this, and we hired somebody to help us, and we spent a lot of time researching and all these other things. And I see people going into a much bigger life transition of retirement with doing very little of that. Sometimes they do it on their own. I think that's very dangerous, both on the financial side, but also on the non-financial side. You need to walk in that with somebody that's done it before. Yep. And one thing that I've learned from now helping thousands of people retire is give the non-financial side time to consider how big of a life change it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think when it comes to retirement and retirement planning, what automatically comes to mind is a financial advisor, which that is the business that we are in. But they will look at, I want to say I want to say like people will look at their retirement planner as purely a financial voice in their life, which predominantly they are. But is it too much to ask that there is somebody to help you through this life transition? Is it always a financial advisor? How should people be trying to find a retirement planner that can not only help them on the financial side, but on this side as well?
Well, the best ones will do that, Jared. I mean, the best ones are going to want a relationship with somebody that extends far beyond their portfolio, right? And I always say there's a person behind that portfolio, and that's whether or not you're transitioning wealth to the next generation, looking at the real needs and goals of both the family that's stewarding it now, but also the future steward, right? So it goes way beyond just those dollars. There's a person behind every portfolio, and what I've come to notice, Jared, is it's almost more work preparing the non-financial side. Right. You're selling a business, you're going through a major life transition there. You're moving out of a career for 30, 40 years potentially, and all of what that entails is a lot. And people do, I think, for the most part, recognize that there's an importance in laying out a good, sound financial plan. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. But what people don't plan for enough is the non-financial side. Yep. That is something I continue to see be a significant mistake in our industry.
Yeah, and again, if you've read your book, Repurpose, The Untold Story of Retirement in America, the whole reason for this platform, the whole reason really for your book was really not recognizing that early in your career, but then now, within the last probably 10 years, really putting a major focus on that.
Yeah, the second half of my career has been much more focused on not necessarily trying to gather assets. I mean, that's what most people in our field do, is they try to gather as much assets as they can. And we just flip the switch to, let's just help people live great retirements. Mm-hmm. In order to do that, saw a real hole in the industry, and that was this non-financial side of retirement, and making sure that transition is, it is what people see in advertising and in the media. It's like, oh, this is a great time. It can be. Yeah. Certain things in place to make that happen.
Yeah, and then going back to your book, it's the title is Repurpose, The Untold Story of Retirement in America. If you want more information on that book or a copy, just visit our website, retirerepurposed.com. All right, Ben, so on today's show, we are titling this show, Resetting Your View of What's Really Important. First of all, let's really start with, what does society, I talked about this here just a couple of minutes ago, what does society say to people, maybe not directly, but indirectly through all the marketing and kind of all the persuasion out there? What are they really saying is important to a retiree?
Yeah, you're going to see, and this is pretty common, right? If you Google the word retirement, if you look at what pops up, it'll circle around money, leisure, travel, and rest. I mean, really, that's it. I mean, and there isn't a lot else. I mean, if you look at what retirement is, that is what you see is those four major things, and that is, and for most people, is a great part of their retirement, but that can't be the goal. And I think that's something that many times, even in the financial talk, we get wrong, as we look at money as it's the goal. And money's always the means. It is never the end. And I think for retirement, right, the end, the goal can't be your money, your leisure, your travel, or your rest. It will leave you unfulfilled if that's the case.
Well, let's talk about that again for a second, because we're not suggesting, like you just mentioned a minute ago as well, that a sound financial plan isn't important. It's vitally important. But what you're saying is that it's not the end goal. In fact, if you make it the goal, and especially make it your identity in retirement, boy, you're going down a real slippery slope.
Yeah, Jared, I think what many people miss, right, is the key component of work that, really a key component of life that is so important. Retirement age, working, career. If you're a kid today, what's important is making a contribution on people, right? We're created to be relational people. We're created to add value. And I think when we get away from that, when our focus becomes too much on ourselves, right, no matter what stage of life you're in, you can start really going off the rails fast.
I think that leads really, really, really well into today's topic, which is the view of what's really important, resetting that. And you have a really kind of a very recent story between you and your daughter and somebody that was near and dear to you, right?
Yeah, Jared, I've got a client that I've worked with for over 20 years and now is elderly and living in a nursing home. And coincidentally, my daughter, getting ready for college, has spent the last couple summers being a CNA at that nursing facility. And the other night she comes home from work and she was kind of upset. And I just said, what's going on? She said, well, it's just a really hard day. And of course, with confidentiality, she couldn't tell me what was going on. But I learned the next day that my client passed away. And what was so interesting and what was so impactful for me and my daughter was, as we're talking about this client, her resident that she was caring for and my client of over 20 years, how important our work was. Not because of the work we did, Jared. I mean, when you're a CNA, and my daughter's told me the type of work she does, it's taking care of elderly and everything that comes with that. It's moving people from their bed to their wheelchair. Sometimes it's helping them do the things that we take for granted that we can do every day. And that work, Jared, is not very glamorous. It's not work that you'd think that you'd like to do, but yet she loves her job. And the reason she loves her job is because she's caring for people. There's always a relationship formed there. There's always a person that she's able to serve. And in this case, it was this client of mine. And as we talked about our work, I said, how great isn't it, Lauren, that we were both able to be part of this lady's life over these last several years, right? I've been able to help her with her financial stuff. And by the way, that's not that glamorous either. When you look at like my work, dealing with investments and mutual funds and estate planning and retirement planning, in and of itself is not that exciting. But when you can tie it to the person and their life and their legacy and all that means, that's when it gets just so exciting. And that's when it gets, that's when it makes my job fun. Yep. And for my daughter, having that conversation with her, I was able to say, how privileged aren't we to be able to do work where we can impact a person, a family in need at the right time. She was able to hold this woman's hand before the paramedics came to the nursing facility and talk to her and get her through that time. We're able to transition wealth, with families and be there for them. But it isn't the glamorous work. It isn't. It's all about the people that we're impacting.
And you've been contacted by this client's family since then, and the client's family has not only commended your daughter, but also you on the work and the impact that you had on this person.
Yeah, I think that's fun, Jared. When you can get a call, not weeks afterwards, and by the way, Mom passed away, I had a call the very next day. They were kind of divvying up who's calling who of these sisters, and there's 4 girls, and they said, somebody's calling Ben. And I'm like, well, I'm their financial guy. But I was more than that because, again, a relationship's formed because if we're doing our job well, that's what happens because we care. Yep. There's a duty of care, but it goes way beyond just, the financial statements, right? And I think that's what's important. When we talk about work, my daughter's work, what was really important to her? It wasn't helping somebody go to the bathroom. It wasn't helping, give a bath. It wasn't helping, move somebody from their bed to their wheelchair and vice versa and feeding somebody, right? It was the people that we're serving. Yeah. And that is such a miss today when people move from work into retirement, when they remove that element of service in their life completely. And it does happen, Jared. It happens where work has given us those opportunities to serve others. It's given us the contribution that people desire deep down to make their day fulfilled. When you retire, if you're not careful, it becomes, again, about those things society wants you to think are going to keep you going. Right. And they always fall short.
Yeah. The top 4 lists that we talked about 10 minutes ago was money, leisure, travel, rest. If we had to come up with kind of the holy list of what society says retirement is really all about and what's most important, I'm sure we could probably add a few more. But again, it goes deeper than having hobbies and just trying to keep yourself busy. It's the people impact that you're alluding to. I think what's interesting about this is that this isn't just go for retirees. I mean, it's literally for everybody. In fact, it's probably how it's in our essence and how we were created I'm sure that dates back to, conception and our creator, but, your daughter was able to experience this on a very similar level that you were from a very, very different perspective.
Yeah, I think it's important, no matter what stage of life you're in, Jared, that you can back into why you do what you do.
Yeah.
And at the heart of that, if you are going to like the work you're doing, you're going to need to tie in some people impact. There needs to be a difference made in somebody's life. And that doesn't matter. I mean, that's any kind of work. You can think you've got a job that doesn't impact people. And if you trace it back just one or two steps, it's either the people in your team, it's the people that are using the end product that you're creating, it's the family at home that you're supporting, but ultimately there is a person there that is making your job and that work worthwhile and making it something that you get a feeling of satisfaction from.
Yeah. And there needs to be like a people group that it needs to be tied to. We can go back to Repurpose University, our online class that we offer retirees and pre-retirees to really find their life, their fullness, their purpose in retirement. Kind of walk us through what that process looks like and how it ends up at this who.
Yeah, the end part is the who, right? But before we get to that, it's really important that people look at, because you're moving from a place where you've had decades of experiences. You still have to harness that. That's still really important to who you are. So you start looking at your life experiences, both at work and through volunteer and work and raising your family. But these are all the things that I've done in my life. So we get basically a word bank, and we're working through all of these important things. The next step after experiences is we're looking at what are the abilities, right? So these are skills and talents. We kind of help you differentiate the two. We look at talents, right? Talents are kind of the God-given part of what you did at work, but then there's also skills, things that you've acquired to do, right? And we differentiate the two, but both of those are called abilities. Then we look at where you have passion. What made really you enjoy life, the things that you kind of kept coming back to. Everybody's got their passions. And then at the end of all of that, right, we end at this spot where you say, that's all great, all these great experiences, the abilities that you have, the passion, but you need a people group. You need your who. And that bottom piece, which is the most important part, right? You combine all those things to then who you're serving, and now you've got a job, a career, or a retirement that really does, it really does help you. It helps you contribute, and it helps you live in a place of purpose.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I think some people who are perhaps eyeballing retirement, still working, they maybe don't believe because of the job that they're doing that there is a who involved, but we say otherwise, right?
Yeah, every single job, every career has that. So you might be thinking, oh, it's a blue collar work. Maybe I'm a plumber. Maybe I'm doing construction work, and I'm not like the foreman who's in charge of some guys to kind of lead and develop. I'm strictly swinging the hammer. I'm framing. You have a who, right? You could tie it back to your family that you're supporting through that. Okay, but I would rather look at it as your who is you're creating this building. You're playing a key role in this because some family will be living in this home. Everything that you're doing, if you're going to do it right, everything should be done to the glory of God. So if you're building that home and you're framing, it better be good, because again, there's some family that's going to live in that home. There's a person that you are adding value to. In every single career, you can trace it back, and that's where you should find some of the enjoyment of your work, right? It should be, yes, I'm getting a paycheck, but I'm also able to make a meaningful contribution to society.
I think there was a story, or maybe it was mentioned somewhere in one of our podcasts, but there was a doctor who was giving the custodian props because I think he was mopping the floor, and this doctor did a good job of giving this janitor like accolades that he was helping save people's lives. And he was like, how do you say that? I'm mopping a floor. And it's kind of the same type of deal here, right?
Well, it is. The most important thing in an operating room is probably not the surgeon. It's that it's a clean operating room.
Right.
If you have an operating room that is that there's disease or there's, some,
Sure.
potential for infection. It doesn't matter how good that surgeon was. If you're doing knee replacement and he's a world-class knee guy, well, if everything wasn't clean and there was infection introduced to that knee through the process, it could be the greatest knee surgeon ever, but that knee's not going to work. There's every career, again, when you back it out, you're doing it so that you're benefiting people. And that's what makes it fun, right? That's what makes work enjoyable. And Jared, that's what makes it so important. And that's what makes it something that is so missed. I think too many times we're like, I got to get done with work as fast as I can so I can get on and retire. That's what society's telling us. Well, work's bad. We know work is not bad. Now, you may be in the wrong type of work, right? You might be in work where it's hard for you to put in, and figure out the who, and it's hard to, you don't feel like you're adding value that day. And certainly we all have days like that. Sometimes it's a bad boss. I've been guilty of that myself. It's like, am I tying back how important our work is for our advisors to the client, right? And really ultimately that's what you're after is, as a great leader, you're also trying to make sure everybody in your organization realizes the difference that they're making in the end user's life.
Exactly right. We got a couple minutes left here. Let's talk about this for a second. So identifying your who, one thing that I think we would both agree on is that when you take out the need for finances, like the economic validation, as Dan Miller once said, you can now kind of like swing for the fences here. This is now a great time to really, really put on the dreaming cap if you're just retired or approaching retirement on a brand new way to bring a ton of impact to the world.
Yeah, exactly. Dan Miller talks about that in his book, where he's talking about how do you find great work, right? And he talks about economic validation, right? You need the stuff we talked about. And by the way, he endorsed my book, which was so cool. But he said, essentially, what we're doing for retirees is similar to their work in finding work that people love. And when you can remove the economic validation as a retiree, because you've got a sound financial plan, right? You have income coming from other places. You don't need to worry on the paycheck. How many people don't miss out on great opportunities where they could be extraordinary, but they need the paycheck, so they have to get they have to know it's going to pay the bills. There's stories all over about people in their 60s that go on to create far more amazing careers and do more good for more people than they did during their career up until that time. Because again, they're allowed to be more free with taking a chance, taking a risk, using again their skills and talents to do something for other people. And they're not worried about getting paid. They just love the work and get that passion behind it, and they create great things. After, most people would say, yeah, you're retired and just move out of the way.
I think it's, again, we can give people the license or the permission to like really think big on this one. There's a friend of mine I worked with in TV, and he retired, and he's enjoying his retirement life. But every once in a while I get a text from him about every 6 months, and he's like, yeah, everything's good. And you could just kind of sense he's like not bored, but like a little bit bored. He's kind of thinking what to do with his time. And then of course I post stuff like this to him and be like, well, what's the next thing for you? You can't just this can't just be it, And he said something to the effect of like, well, I could go back and maybe, teach kids or just teach kids around my neighborhood X, Y, or Z, because he's passionate about golf and fishing and weather and all that stuff. But I was like, what if you went bigger than that? Like, what if you just thought, like, what if you could create a platform and really, really go big on this? Why not? You know what I mean? Like, we've got about a minute left. Like, give people just like that zing in the pants to be like, man, like you can really, really swing for the fences here, and why not go big on this one?
Yeah, you've got nothing to lose, and then again, everything to lose, right? We do, because I think if more retirees don't step up and realize, yeah, I can do something great with my life skills that I've really been blessed with all these years. And you do nothing with that goes back to being a good steward, right? When we're talking about, taking the gifts that God's given you, both financial and non-financial, and don't just sit on them, right? But steward them well and go into retirement saying, I'm going to take a risk here. I'm going to do something big, right? I don't need a paycheck. I got all the time I've ever wanted. I can do something great, make a huge contribution to society, right? And we all win.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.